True. Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Chill drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.
The Shumlaka culture of Western Cameroon supports the Diopian migration model. So this model again postulates that the pre-dialectical ancestor of modern African populations, specifically the Paleo-African populations, defined as Niger-Egyptian by Theophile Obenga, originated in the Great Lakes region of the Happy River Basin, and then migrated throughout the African continent. So recent genetic research on the Shum Laka foragers from Western Cameroon provides an unprecedented empirical evidence that aligns with key aspects of the Diopian theoretical framework. So the genome-wide DNA from 4 children buried at Schumlaka approximately 8 to 3,000 years ago offered the first genetic evidence of ancient DNA from West and Central Africa. Now, these Schumlaka foragers are seen to be related to the Nutripian culture in the Congo River Basin, as well as the ancient microlithic technology users of West Africa. These would be the Kakoro, creators of the Titit culture in the Ho Depression of Mauritania, also defined by many other scholars as the West African coastal refugia. So the haplogroup AOO was identified within Schumlaka, and this is the oldest known branch of Y-DNA, with estimated divergence times of 200,000 to 300,000 years before present. So this shows the evidence of long-standing populations on the African continent, chronologically diverse populations, right? And when it comes to hunter-gatherer populations, you see some continuity that aligns with the Diopian migration model. However, when it comes to so-called Bantu-speaking populations, the level of continuity between the ancient Shum Laka culture and these modern Central and Southern African so-called Bantu populations is not there. So we can see some genomic characteristics of the Schumlaka individual, particularly with respect to phylogenetics in the A haplogroup, the B haplogroup, as well as the LOA haplogroup. And when we look at the language and cultural facts, we see that Schumlaka site is located in the Grassfields region of Western Cameroon. Many linguists have posited that this would be the homeland of the Bantu language group. And these would be linguists in the Afrikaner school, the Greenbergian school, that basically posit a unilineal migration from this region. Diop's migration model emphasizes the interconnectedness of language spread and population movements, suggesting that major linguistic expansions may often correspond to demographic shifts. But what Schumlaka findings indicate is that this region of Western Cameroon, the Grassfields region, was inhabited by populations who were genetically distinct from contemporary so-called Bantu speakers. And this coincides with the idea that many West and Central Africans, upon migrating from the Happy River Basin, encountered local populations that they distinguished from themselves. So the ancient foragers of the Shum Laka culture practiced a transitional subsistence strategy that included foraging with increasing use of fruits from Canarian Schweinfurthi, alongside developments in material culture that served as a foundation for later architecture. The gradual transition from foraging to more settled agricultural practices align with Diop's emphasis on internal African developments in technology and subsistence, rather than attributing agricultural advances to Eurasian influences. The material culture of Schumlaka shows evidence of both local innovation and possible northern influences from later periods, including changes in stone tools that can be interpreted as a fusion of local toolmaking tradition of the later Stone Age with new macrolithic technologies that were introduced from the north. And this pattern of technological synthesis corresponds with Diop's model of cultural exchange between different African regions rather than a unidirectional diffusion from outside the continent, from Eurasians. Diop's migration model posits specific connections between Happy River Basin populations and Western Central African people. The Shum Laka culture provides support for this model through its revelation of complex dynamics. Particularly if you look at the ancestral regression graph, you can see that modern Western Central Africans are more closer to Modaman in ancient Ethiopia than they are to ancient West Africans. These would be these ghost archaic humans and the ghost modern humans, which would be represented by a lot of the microlithic using cultural coastal refugia in ancient West Africa. The Schumlaka research also complicates traditional narratives about the Bantu migration, especially since, as late as 3,000 years ago within Western Cameroon, the genetic profile of the population does not coincide with modern so-called Bantu populations, right? Now, many scholars such as Lunyigo, Felix Chami, Mubabingi Bololo, Pierre Umdigi, Hilaire Esse Ngomi, et cetera, have posited that the so-called Bantu migration included a multi-directional, multi-generational movement of populations that are now classified by the Greenbergian Africanist as Bantu. Now, scholars like Bruce Dixon, in their analysis on punctuated equilibrium and the effects of mass comparison and contact, show that when it comes to, language groupings like Bantu and phyla like Niger-Congo, it may be impossible to prove these with respect to the historical comparative approach due to the lack of good data, the lack of legitimate data, linguistic data, to be able to discern the time depth of the ancestral groups that these modern populations descend from. And this is the problem when you step outside of the rigorous Africana approach and you remove the ancient Pharaonic civilization as a reciprocal reference system. You basically suspend the history of Western Central Africa in air. Diop was famous for using his pluridisciplinary approach, which combined historical linguistics, anthropology, archaeology, history, and scientific approaches like carbon dating and melanin dosage test. The Schumlaka research exemplifies this same integrative approach by combining genetic analysis with archaeological context, radiocarbon dating, linguistic information, and anthropological interpretation. Diop consistently advocated for this type of African-centered research methodologies in order to specifically question Eurocentric assumptions that interpreted African data through false frameworks. The Schumlaka research identifies three prominent radiations in African history, including one that gave rise to at least 4 major lineages deep in the history of modern humans. This model aligns with Diop's emphasis on deep antiquity, and it shows that alongside the emanation of the out-of-Africa population that led to Europeans, along with the archaic human emanation, we also find an emanation of populations from the Happy River Basin, according to the Schumlaka ancestral regression graph in the study showing the relationship of modern West Africans to modern East Africans. And this basically debunks the idea that these populations were separate by tens of thousands of years. Again, from this genomic evidence, we can see that it's very, very clear that there is a Diopian relationship between the Pharaonic civilization in the Happy River Basin and contemporary West and Central African populations. So it's important that we use an integrated African-centered approach when it comes to the analysis of these cultures, and the genomic evidence that we have at our disposal from the L2A2, phylogeography to the LOA phylogeography, showing the promulgation of Veronic lineages from the Happy River Basin into modern Central Africa, be it Cameroon or Congo, validating many of the oral narratives about the Ngala relationship with Veronic Africa. And even the historical linguistic analysis from Gilbert and Gome, Umdigi, etc., that show a clear genetic relationship between African languages like Sawa or Douala and Metrem and Kimi, or the ancient Pharaonic language. All of this research is important, and we should look more to an accurate analysis of the ancient cultures on the African continent, not only in validation of the Diopian migration model, but the larger global African plight for Black liberation. That's all I got on this one. I hope to catch you on the next one. Peace.
Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kanji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Big drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kanji verse.